All plausible theories of existence have two parts. One to do with sensible stuff, matter, the stuff we detect with our senses, and the other to do with intelligible things, forms, ideas, universals, concepts, which we access via reason, logic, intellect. Plato, Aristotle and Aquinas all used the idea of metaphysical forms, universals, to serve as the intelligible component of reality, with matter serving as the sensible component. Of course, they made no attempt to explain how form and matter, universals and particulars, could coexist and interact. They simply asserted that they could enter into combinations with each other. Scientific materialism relies on matter to provide sensibility and mathematics to provide intelligibility, yet renders itself incoherent by dismissing mathematics as an unreal abstraction. Hence it cannot validly involve mathematics in any account of scientific reality. Basically, science tacitly claims that there is something intelligible about matter, but it can't access it and doesn't know what it is, and never refers to it. It believes that mathematics, for some unknown reason, can accurately approximate it, even though mathematics isn't real, according to science. Science never discusses this topic, the intelligibility of sensible matter, because it cannot, and it dare not. It can't possibly refer to forms, ideas, concepts, or universals, since all of these concern philosophy and mathematics and have nothing to do with science. So, science is stuck. Matter is the only thing in its toolbox and it can't refer to anything else to make matter intelligible, so it uses mathematics to supply intelligibility to matter, even as, in the same breath, it rejects the reality of mathematics. Not one scientist is bothered about this, or interested in it, or makes any comment on it. To be crystal clear, science has no right to refer to mathematics if it doesn't think mathematics is real. Yet if mathematics were removed from science, science would be unintelligible and useless. The intelligibility of science, according to science, is unreal. Intelligibility is not part of science. Science is all about sensibility, about what can be observed. Intelligibility cannot be observed. You cannot look at any material object and see its intelligibility, i.e., what organizes it into that particular sensible configuration. All you see is its phenomenal appearance, and then you have to work out how its underlying, unobservable, noumenal intelligibility is creating that particular appearance. The first step of the scientific method concerns observation, i.e., it's about sensibility. Subsequent steps, concerning the formation of hypotheses to explain what has been observed, are where science introduces intelligibility, and this always involves a mathematical treatment of the observed data. Intelligibility is inevitably secondary in science, as per its defining method. In ontological mathematics, it is primary, while sensibility is secondary and is something derived from and explained by intelligibility. The first step of the mathematical method involves thinking, intelligibility, not sensing, sensibility. Why does science privilege sensibility over intelligibility? Because it's not a thinking subject. It's a sensing subject. Why doesn't science accept that mathematics is real and supplies the real intelligibility of science? It's because if it did that, then there would be no further need of science. If mathematics is real, we can explore reality using the mathematical method, not the scientific method. Science can't bear something, mathematics, being more fundamental than it, and so it shamelessly uses mathematics while rejecting mathematics. Science is to matter, sensibility, as mathematics is to form, intelligibility. Science is to particulars as mathematics is to universals. Most people have no clue that the key intellectual debate concerns form versus matter, universals versus particulars, intelligibility versus sensibility, noumena versus phenomena, mathematics versus science. Yet this is an age-old debate. There's nothing new about it. However, it has been restricted to the most obscure corridors of philosophy and is more or less ignored in today's academic world. That's how deeply materialism and empiricism are now ingrained. This exotic Debate now has a definitive solution: ontological mathematics. Ontological mathematics explains everything, including scientific matter. Matter is simply one of the inherent properties of mathematics, just as space, time, temperature, gravity and entropy are. The long dispute has been resolved. Yet the sad fact is that science is incapable of entering into this debate. Intellectual considerations are not part of its method, or ideology, or paradigm. It has no interest in them. That's not what scientists do. They don't seek coherence. They seek practical success. They seek something that works. The fact that science doesn't make any sense, that it's formally unintelligible, has never detained or troubled scientists. Once they had embraced mathematics, they had the means to make science successful in practical terms. What they didn't have was any way to explain why mathematics is essential to science, but they didn't care about that. It worked, and that's all that mattered. Shut up and calculate. This topic is, to all intents and purposes, never raised by any modern scientists. These people are not intellectuals. They have none of the integrity and passion for truth of the great philosophers. Many scientists pride themselves on knowing nothing about philosophy, nothing about the essential debate of universals versus particulars. Most people have no interest in the ultimate intellectual war. They can contribute nothing to it. What about you? Are you prepared to think the supreme intellectual thoughts, to take part in the debate that the masses would literally avoid like the plague? You prove that you are one of the most intelligent people on earth if you can follow our books, if you are interested in these topics. The ordinary person would rather do anything else than consider these issues, the issues which concern the fundamental nature of existence and how to gain knowledge of it. You should never let yourself be intimidated by the intellectual game. As Plato highlighted thousands of years ago, it all comes down to sensibility versus intelligibility. What allows us to experience the world, and what allows us to understand the world? Clearly, the world has a component we can observe. This is the object aspect, the material aspect. But what is doing the observing, the experiencing? That is the subject aspect, the mental aspect. Science, a field concerning objects, has nothing to say about the subjective perspective. This perspective doesn't exist in science. Animals can subjectively experience the world but have no understanding of the world. They are unable to extract the intelligibility from it. Where is the intelligibility? Plato located it outside the sensible world, in the domain of forms. Aristotle united forms and matter, via his doctrine of hylomorphism, in the natural world, with God standing as pure form, matterless form, outside the physical world. Science locates intelligibility in mathematics, which it says is unreal, and sensibility in matter. Science is all about observing sensibles and then interpreting mathematically the patterns sensibles make. These patterns are the observable consequence of the underlying, unobservable intelligibility. The idea of a purely intelligible domain, such as Plato spoke of, is anathema to science. In ontological mathematics, the purely intelligible domain is the eternal and necessary frequency domain of pure mathematics, an immaterial singularity of mind, outside space and time, which exists at zero entropy, zero gravity, zero friction, and at a temperature of absolute zero. It's an infinitely superconductive environment, i.e., it can never run down or degrade. There is nothing to have this effect on it, which is exactly why existence retains its productive energy forever. Science denies that reality is eternally self-powering. It claims that the universe runs down, the entropic heat death of the universe asserted by the second law of thermodynamics. Then it needs to invoke randomness to get anything started up again, in some other location for a universe, so as not to collide with the dead universe. Where can you position a newborn universe? You have to invent some new dimension, hermetically sealed off from this dimension. Good luck with that job. The eternal and necessary frequency singularity of mind is the domain of the principle of sufficient reason in its pristine form. It's the pure Occam's razor core of existence. Any system which fails to give a precise account of intelligibility and sensibility, and how they relate to each other and interact, is, by that fact alone, false. Only one subject on earth deals with intelligibility and sensibility properly, accounting for them in exact ontological, epistemological, physical and metaphysical terms. That subject is ontological mathematics. There is nowhere to go beyond ontological mathematics. It truly is the end of the line, the absolute foundation on which everything else rests, and of which everything else is an expression. Science is such a sad subject because, by accident really, it intersects with reality through its use of mathematics, but there is no scientist concerned with analyzing how reality presents two faces, the intelligible and sensible, and accounting for the ontology of each. Science is incapable of addressing intelligibility as a real thing. Science addresses only sensibility. Step 1 of its method, the defining step of science, is about observing sensibles. Only the sensible is deemed real, and intelligibility is then relegated to an exercise in abstraction and unreality, hence science's use of man-made mathematics. Ontological mathematics, by total contrast, takes intelligibility as the essence of existence, so step 1 of its method concerns thinking, using reason and logic, not observing, using the senses. Science privileges the sensible over the intelligible, which is why it is not an intelligible subject. The only intelligible part of science is the mathematical part, exactly the part which science dismisses as unreal. Ontological mathematics privileges the intelligible over the sensible, which is why it is all about reason and logic, form, syntax, concepts, universals, Occam's razor, and the principle of sufficient reason. It definitely isn't about the principle of sufficient empiricism, as science is. Here's the curious thing about all of this. It is impossible to have a debate with scientists about this. Science, because of its total faith in ontological sensibility and total rejection of ontological intelligibility, offers no scope to question sensibility and assert the ontology of intelligibility. It is literally a forbidden topic within the scientific paradigm. The paradigm intentionally excludes it. You have to ask yourself a simple question: what kind of system deliberately excludes and denies ontological intelligibility? What's for sure is that it is not an intellectual one. It is anti-intellectual. No intellectual would ever take the side of science, based on ontological sensibility and the repudiation of ontological intelligibility, against ontological mathematics, based on ontological intelligibility, which defines ontological sensibility. When you look at the universe, you have two options. 1. To see only sensibility. This is what science does. Or to see both sensibility and intelligibility, i.e., you can intellectually detect that the sensible stuff is everywhere penetrated by something intelligible, non-sensible, which organizes and orders it, and makes it exhibit obvious patterns. This is the position of ontological mathematics, which continues the tradition of Plato and Aristotle regarding form, intelligibility, and matter, sensibility. Is the universe only about sensible particulars, as scientific materialism claims, or is it about sensible particulars expressing intelligible universals, which are in fact the primary reality, as ontological mathematics asserts? To put it another way, is this a mental universe of ontological thinking, or a material universe of lifeless, mindless, purposeless, unthinking physical atoms? Are you inherently an eternal mind, a thinking agent, or a temporal body, a material thing? Are you intelligible, or merely sensible? If you deny your own mind, all you do is prove that you have a diseased mind. You are not your body. It's just a temporary vessel. You are your mind. You are a fundamental node of existence, and you will exist forever. You belong to the intelligible order of existence. However, via reincarnation, you acquire one sensible body after another, with which you strongly identify. But you should never mistake your body for yourself. Scientists mistake collections of lifeless, mindless, purposeless atoms for themselves. They are wholly cut off from the truth of their own existence.